Hi viewers, welcome to the channel, and today we're looking at configuration tables. Now if you don't know what configuration tables are, they allow you to use a spreadsheet with a number of values in here. So we've got the A, B and C here, and add that to a drop down, allowing you to assign each of the values just by changing that drop down. We're going to be learning how to do this and also how to retrofit this to a existing spreadsheet model. So for instance, I have this parametric brick here. If I come over to the part, I can change the brick configuration in the different brick sizes to a 2x3 or a 2x2 and add more sizes in there to allow us to not go back to that spreadsheet and keep updating the values. Through this tutorial, you'll learn how powerful the configuration table is. And we're going to be covering both part and part design objects. But as you can see from the next demonstration where we show retrofitting into another spreadsheet, that it can be used in any of the workbenches. So I hope you're enjoying these videos, and let's have a look at this technique.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel.
So the first thing I'm going to do in FreeCAD is create a new document. I'm going to come over to the part, and we're going to start with creating a standard cube just to demonstrate the configuration table. I'm going to then come over to the spreadsheet, and I'm going to define some values in the spreadsheet for the cube, which has this box dimensions on the data tab of length, width and height. At the moment we can see they're all 10. So I'm going to set this to say 30 by 30 by 30. And the reason being is I want to show you that this is changing when we add the spreadsheet. So we've got our cube here. We're in the spreadsheet workbench and we're creating a new spreadsheet. Now it's important when we start to leave this column blank, because this is going to take the labels for the different configurations that we're going to add. First of all, we need a default configuration to tell the spreadsheet we're using the configuration table. To do that, I'm going to start adding some headers along here. Now this is nothing to do with the configuration. This is just to do with identifying those fields. So we're going to go for a height, width and length. Just keeping it simple for the time being. And then we're going to show you how to retrofit this to a spreadsheet that you may already have. So we've got height, width and length there. And I'm going to add some values of 10 by 10 by 10. And then from here, we're going to add alias to these fields. So each of these fields are going to be aliased up. So this one's going to be the height. Now case does matter here, so I'm using the uppercase H for height and the same for the width. Now if this was lowercase, this will end up being a separate alias. I'm hitting enter on the alias fields, and what you'll see is that this will show up as yellow to show that alias has been taken, and a length in this one. Now this is important, so hit enter now, pressing the arrow keys to move around, because what we've got is our default values that run across the top. I haven't added anything to this field yet. Let's come back to the cube and look at the length. We're going to hook this up to our spreadsheet. So click on the length field. Let's bring this out a bit, and then we can see what actually happens in here. So looking at the length, we're using this little icon on the end, which will open up the formula editor. At the moment, it's got the value in there. So if I start to type spreadsheet, you see the spreadsheet appears here. Click on that, and then a dot is added, and we can use length to bring in that value. See the value is brought in as 10. Let's do the same with the next one, the width, and spreadsheet. Now I've used the down arrow key to select that and start to type in width using down arrow key, enter and OK. And we'll move down, and this one, spreadsheet, down arrow, and finally height. and hit enter. So those are all connected up, and you see we've got our cube now, which is 10 by 10 by 10, and you can see by clicking on that cube we get those individual formulas that have been added in from the spreadsheet. So now let's go back to the spreadsheet. What I want to do with this is add a number of different sizes going down here. So these will be different configurations. So we've got our base size here, which is 10 by 10 by 10. This is going to be our defaults. So we're going to create a 1 by 1 by 1, which is a duplicate of the top here, which is 10 by 10 by 10. And for the time being, we'll just create another one, which is 1 by 1 by 2, which is a 10 by 10 by 20. So what we've done is basically taken this and duplicated it up for our first row and then changed it for our second row. That's important because when we add the configuration table by clicking on this space here between our row labels and our default values and right clicking, we get this drop down appear and we go to configuration table. We can then configure the table. It's going to ask for a property in a group. Now if we look over to the left hand side, we can see the spreadsheet is highlighted and we've got property, and these grey areas are the groups. So I'm going to add a property of, say, configurations. This can be whatever you want, so configurations, and the group also can be whatever you want. So I'm going to add it to something called parameters. Now before I hit OK, look over to the left hand side. See the spreadsheet's there. We've only got that base and label property there. Let's hit OK. We now got configurations added. And you can see that here we've got the 1 times 1 by 1 that's been duplicated up. Now if I change the configuration to 1 by 1 by 2 and click off, you notice the top one has changed to 1 by 1 by 2. So this is the current selected one, also the default one when we very first come in. And if we change that again, we got the 1 by 1, and you'll see that's changed there. If I click on these, you notice that the alias is still height, but the content has changed. So it's equal.b3, equal.c3, equal.d3. That's tile this window. So hit tile, and we get these side by side. So we've got the spreadsheet and the document. And if I change this configuration and observe what's happening, now I've got to click off, and we'll see that the 1 by 1 by 2 has been taken, and you can see that there, and our spreadsheet has changed. The good thing about this, if we want to add more values, we just add them to the end of the spreadsheet. So I'm going to go for 1 by 2 by 2, which is a 10 by 20, and then by 20. I just hit the tab key to go to the next column. And now when we click on the configuration and drop this down, we got this 1 by 2 by 2. Click it, click off, and our configuration has worked. Now it's been added to the spreadsheet. We can add this to the cube. The thing that we have to be wary of in a part workflow that we're using here, come back to the part workflow, is that we have the cube. When we add something like another cube to this, like so, and I'm just going to transform this and say bring this up here, hit OK. So we've got 2 items here. I want to add this drop down to this cube, but I can't really, because if I take these 2 cubes and do anything like booleans or cuts on there, or a union, let's go for a union on those 2, we get a fusion. So if I added this drop down, which is on the spreadsheet, to that cube, it's going to be nested inside here. So we have to open this nesting up. How do we get around this? Well, on every single workbench, if you look to the top, you'll see a toolbar, which has a yellow stair. So this create part, this might be in a different position, and we can pull this out and put this somewhere else. I'm just going to pop it here for now. So this yellow stair here, which is create part. I'm just going to close the spreadsheet and maximize my screen like so. Now if I click that part, anything new I add now will be added to the part. So there's a cube that's added, so it's been added to that part there. Let's delete that and pull in the fusion into the part. You can have multiple parts. So if I add another part here, this becomes the active part. You see it in bold. If I add a cube now, it gets added to the active part. If I wanted to add a cube to the other part, this one here, I have to right click and come up to toggle active part. So that's active now. If I add a cube now, it gets added to that part. I'm just going to delete that part. What will happen if I hit the delete key on the keyboard, it will say the part is not empty. Do you want to delete the contents as well? Which I'm going to say yes to. And I'm going to delete the cube from that part as well. And also delete the fusion. And finally, the last cube inside here, the one without the formula or parameters added to, let's delete that. So we've got the cube inside the part. Now, how do we move this configuration to this part? So this will never change, the contents will. So this is a perfect place to place the configuration. It's quite simple. Let's come back to the spreadsheet and we click on the same field that we did before. If I click on it, you can see content equals hidden ref. So this tells you that this is connected to a configuration table. If I right click on that and go to configuration table, that brings me back to that same configuration table that I was editing. From here, I can actually remove it by the unset, but we don't want to do that. All we need to do, if we look, we've got this group parameters. Let's change this property. Let's just type in uppercase P, A, R, T for part. You can see the part is showing there. Let's put a full stop or a dot in there and hit OK. Now, the configuration here is still sitting here. Now if I come on to the model and drop this configuration down, what you'll see, it's not taking effect on this model. If I go over to the part, you'll notice that we've got parameters now and configurations, and we can drop this down to whatever we want, click off, and now that's on the part taking effect on our model. So anything we do in here now, let's add a sphere and say take the cube and control click the sphere and do a cut. So cut out that section there. Our part will still have the configuration on there because that never changes, but our cube has. So you can see that cut is sitting there. So I change that part now to a configuration of 1 by 2 by 2 and click off. You can see that's taken effect and our cut is still sitting there included into that model. So what I've done now is entered a part design workflow. We're going to show you the same process, but there's one difference in that we don't use the create part. Because we have a body, this is where we add that feature upon there, so that drop down can be added to that body. So we'll create a body and then create a new sketch. We're going to do the same, go along the XY plane, and we're going to create a model in there of that cube. So we're going to use the center rectangle and use the auto constraints. We've got that checked, and we'll hover over that center to make coincident constraint, and we come out. Therefore, with this, we can add some length against our spreadsheet here. So this one will be spreadsheet.length. Same process, just that we're using the sketcher. And this one is spreadsheet.width. So come into the formula editor, spreadsheet.width. And then what we'll do after this, once we've got the width and the length in there, the height, if we close this, make sure that sketch is selected and use the pad, this is where we add the height. So this formula against the length, we come in here and do spreadsheet dot height. And OK that. OK once more. We've got the formulas in on the pad for the length. This one is spreadsheet.height, and then we've got the length and the width in the sketch. If we come down to the constraints and open this up, you notice we got the length and the width in here, for the two constraints are in there. That's all rigged up now. Now we just need to add this spreadsheet to that body. I previously cleared out the configuration table, otherwise we're going to get an error on here. So we come into here, right click and configuration table, and we just hit the unset to clear that out. Now when we add this, instead of putting part, we just use body. You can see body has come up, body dot, and I'm going to change it to config this time, just to show that we can use different labels in there, and we'll do config.params instead. That's okay, that. So that's in there. If we look at the body, we got this config here, and we can drop this down and now change this to whatever we want. So straight away that's working. So that's how to add it to your part design workflow. Pretty simple, very similar. So what I'm going to do now is retrofit this spreadsheet and this model to a configuration table. Let's first have a look at what this is. So if I use the spreadsheet, I can control the width and the length, which controls the configuration of this brick. So we've got, as you can see, the configuration on the bottom, we've got one tube there. If I change that spreadsheet to say width of 3 and a length of 5, it will automatically update and add the necessary tubes in here. The minimum is a 2x2. I can't go any smaller than that, because any smaller and then we actually get rid of this tube. I'm going to come over to the spreadsheet and start adding the configurations in here. So 2x2, a 2x3, and we'll go for a 3x3. So this is going to be the configuration table, and we'll just pad this out with the values, but we need the alias, and this is where the problems start to occur. So 2x2. I can put the column headers in here. As a matter of fact, I will. So this one's going to be the width, and this one's going to be the length. Let's take the width first. So this one here. Let's come up to the width. This one. So width units. We can see that this one here has a dependency on this width units. So let's take this field, which has got 2 in it, width units, and right click and cut. So I'm moving that field, and I'm going to place it in to this one. Right click, paste. So that one is width units, and it's been moved. So this field now, it's got no use. It's just sitting there. Let's note the value in width here, and that's moved down. Let's keep that in view and change this width. So this should update. Let's change this to 4. Click off. Nothing's happened. The link has somehow got severed between this alias and the calculate fields. How do we fix that? Well, the easiest way to do it is to click on the alias and change it. And let's add just a 1 on the end of that alias. If we hit enter now, see the width has changed. It's actually updated. It's got a new alias, so it's updated. The alias is still linked, but that update has fixed the problem there. If we come over to the spreadsheet workbench and have a look what happens, let's change that alias back now. Let's change this back to width units and hit enter and click off. So this now is width units. If I change this back now, everything should calculate correctly. So you just have to be wary of that when you're changing this over to a configuration table. Let's take the length units now and do the same. Let's take the length units, right click, cut, click on the length, right click, paste. That's in there now. If we look at the top, we can see the refresh of the sheet, well, it's not even showing as a refresh, so everything looks okay. Let's quickly change that to 1, enter, click off, click back on. Length units is 1, let's take that off. That should have fixed the aliasing problem. So if I change that now to 3, this length should change. And we can see it does. And we'll come over to the parametric brick. 2 by 3, and let's change that back to 2 for the length. And it's changing absolutely fine. So let's put the configuration table in here. Use the first config. But we've got a problem in that our fuse compound could change. So I could add another shape or another geometry on here, and that workflow will be updated, causing the active object, the topmost object, to change. So let's add a part to this. It's a lattice workbench workflow, this one here. We're looking there, we can see it's no part design, so let's just add a part in here. Using the part, drag the fuse compound into the part. Now we're ready to assign up a drop down in the part. Come back to the spreadsheet. We're going to select our first option, which is going to be the default and the currently selected. Right click, configuration table. Property is going to be the part. And you can see it's coming up here. Dot, and we'll call this brick sizes. Next thing is going to be the group, and we'll call this params. Hit enter. That's been added now. Let's come over to the brick, and we'll see that's changed. So our current one is a 2 by 3. Let's have a look. Come over to the part and come down. We've got our configurations in here, 2 by 3 and a 3 by 3. There we go. That's working. Because we added that to the very first one, then that's been removed. So we need a 2 by 2 in here. So let's add a 2 by 2. Let's try inserting one. So right click, insert one row above. And 2 by 2. You can see we've got some recompute fails down here. Let's add 2 by 2 in here. And we can see that's taken. Everything looks okay. Edit. There's no refresh. Let's come back to our brick. Click on the part. 2 by 3. Now we should have a 2 by 2. Click off. That's working. And finally, we got the 3 by 3. And that's working. So now if we come back, we can get rid of these fields, so the width units and the length units. If you wanted to, what you can do is bind these to this value here. So we get an update between them. So if I bind this length units by right click, bind, it's going to ask us what cell we want to bind it to. So we're binding cell B1, it's the first cell in the range, the last cell to B2, which is not what I want to do. I want it to B12. So let's come down and change this to B12 and change this one to B12 and hit OK. We've now got a binded cell. Let's do the other one. So right click, bind, and we want this to C12. So C12, let's just keep it uppercase just in case, and C12. And OK. Those are bound now. So we could have removed them, but I've just kept those there so they update. Click on the part and change this to a 2 by 2. Come back to the spreadsheet. You can see the 2 by 2 has been added there. Got 2 by 2 here, and our brick has changed. So we've kept these fields in. And we've got our configuration table down the bottom, which we can add to if we want to. We just add one in there. And everything's working fine. So that's how to retrofit a spreadsheet with the configuration table. And also binding in the cells if you want to keep them. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you found it useful. And I hope to see you again in the next video.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire. And that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/mangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.